I've been drawing every day for a week because AI is stupid and humans are better. If you've been following my progress through my shorts, you'll know how insane my improvement is. But if not only am I going to show you how much better I got in just a week, I'm going to tell you how you can do the exact same thing. If you're watching this in October, I'm doing a drawing challenge for the rest of the month, so feel free to join along with me if this video inspires you at all. And if you make something, you can tag me on Twitter to send me the day's drawing. Now, before we get to the art itself, I want to start with why I decided to do this in the first place. As you've probably seen by now, AI-generated content is taking over the internet, and AI artists, or posers as I will call them, have made it harder for actual artists to do what they love for a living. So I wanted to learn how to make good art myself to prove to the AI bros that not only are they not good artists, but they're lazy and making real art isn't even that hard. I've always been interested in art, but I never really pursued it, so I'm starting from a baseline level of no tangible drawing experience, and in a week, I'm already pretty decent. And I don't want my progress to discourage you if you're joining along and aren't seeing the same progress, because I want this challenge to be something that'll inspire you. Right now, I'm thinking of it like playing Silksong, because I just beat the game, and I think it's a really good analogy. If you played Silksong, it's a pretty challenging game, but if you're a gamer, that challenge doesn't matter. The game scales in difficulty as you scale in skill. The first boss isn't that hard, but when you first fight them, it's pretty rough. Once you beat that first area, you can go back later, and you're like, all these guys are so easy. Like, I've learned the skills, and now I can keep going and do the next thing. Drawing is the same way. You draw something, and your art will be at that one skill level, so you draw something harder, then something harder, and harder, and harder, and as you go, you're not gonna make the Mona Lisa, and the thing that you draw that's harder, you're not gonna be drawing it well, but when you go back to draw something easy with the skills you learned from that harder challenge, you're gonna be a lot better because you're improving those skills subconsciously. That's the artistic process. When I started, this is the first thing I drew. It's not good. This looks like a classroom whiteboard drawing at best. But now I'm making stuff like this, which is leagues better. And if you're looking at this and going, I can't do that, you're wrong. So let's break it down day by day. For each day, I had a theme and a couple reference images. I started mostly by tracing just to get a feel for the geometry and slowly moved on there to really hone in on how to draw. With each drawing, there were two big steps. First, I needed a good sketch of the figure that I would be drawing, and second, I would need to shade. This is an oversimplification, but by breaking up the process into creating the thing and coloring it, I would be forcing myself to learn a lot of different skills very fast. For day one, the prompt was my cat Gojo. I started with the program Krita. It's free to use and really accessible, so I did my best tracing him out, tried to color him a bit, tried some shadow work, but it felt really sloppy. I traced the reference image to try to get a feel for the shapes at play. I noticed a lot of details of my cat that I didn't before, like the fact that he has a dick and balls on his face. I messed around with different tools, I tried shading, but the end result looked like a DeviantArt colored pencil drawing. So for day two, I chose the theme Kirby because he's a circle. Circles are easy. This is a 10,000 IQ play. My goal was to try and learn 3D shapes. When you're drawing a 2D image, you're really drawing an interpretation of a 3D environment. When we use our eyes, we see a 2D image, but that's our brain's interpretation of the 3D environment that we live in. So for Kirby, I tried first using the shape tool in Photoshop to make a circle and filled it with a gradient to simulate shading. But even though I did that, it still looked really flat and I wasn't sure why. So I moved back to Krita for another go. And it was better. My shading was still weird, but I was getting closer. When you shade a drawing, you're doing three things. You're coloring, you're determining the 3D shape of the object, and you're determining the position of the light source. At day two, I hadn't really realized this fully yet. I knew it had to be lighter on one side and darker on another, but I didn't really understand how the mechanics worked. And the best thing to do if you're struggling with this yourself is just to look at stuff. Look at what you want to draw and notice how the light bounces off of it. It's honestly easier, in my opinion, to look at stylized art because the shading is deliberate and simplified. I looked at a lot of art from my friend Carr, who does the thumbnails for Rumble Pack, my group channel, and their style has a lot of very clear shading even when it's a more cartoony figure. So with that in mind, I went to work on day three. The theme for day three was Halloween. I wanted to make a pumpkin, a skeleton, and a Halloween costume. So I made a cute little pumpkin real quick, then moved on to the skeleton. Looking back at the footage, I would have approached this way differently, but it was serviceable enough, so we move on. When I did the skeleton, I decided to combine it with the Halloween costume to make it a little cooler. For the skull, I traced a reference, but I paid a lot of attention to where the shading lines were. Because as far as the actual shadows went, I feel like I did a really good job, and I learned a lot from this example. Now, I can't say the same for the rest of the skeleton. I mean, these hands, man, they keep me up at night. Now, right after doing this guy, I started watching some more art tutorials and made a few realizations, and I would utilize them in the next day's drawing. For day 4, the theme was Hollow Knight, and I'm just gonna cut to the chase here. Look at this hornet. You saw the thumbnail. I was wasn't lying. This was day 4, and we still have half a week left. Now, you're probably wondering what I learned to make her come out this good, so let's get into it. First, I started with some line and circle exercises, just a quick way to learn straighter lines and more consistent curves. Pretty much every YouTuber I watched used this technique. I've been watching a lot of PyCat, specifically PCat. I don't know how to pronounce it. They've been good. I see their shorts all the time, but this is an exercise that I would be doing every day before each new attempt. From there, I started by thinking about the geometry of each character. I warmed up with the knight from Hollow Knight. I ended up messing up the cloak. I don't really like how it turned out, although I did use a more action-y pose here as the reference, so even though it isn't perfect, it's not half bad. Then for Hornet, I cooked. I made an oval and figured out what it would look like as a 3D shape. I took a chunk out of the top and then put Hornet's eyes where they would make sense on a circular object. Then for the shading of the head, I used the different quadrants of the circle to inform where to shade. I pretty much figured this out by accident, but I made the lines much harsher as I was shading them in, which made the end result look so much better. From there, I did the skirt based on the reference, but I was still learning highlights and shading, so it wasn't perfect. So what have we learned so far? Shade based on the light source, shade based on 3D geometry, and even if you're just sketching, use that 3D geometry to inform where features should be. After making this, I immediately thought, oh, I should have used a cone for the skirt, which would have made it make a little more sense when shading. Anyway, on to day 5. Just kidding, I couldn't stop. I was so proud of this Hornet that I just kept on drawing. I drew another Kirby, taking some of my lighting cues, but they weren't quite there yet. Then I started some early practice on the next day's theme, vehicle. I chose this theme specifically to challenge myself. A lot of artists in my comments said something along the lines of,
hell nah, I can't do vehicle.
To which I said, watch me. The problem a lot of artists have is they draw the same thing over and over again. I watched PewDiePie's 1-year drawing video, and all he drew was anime girls, which I mean, props to him for doing a whole year, but he wasn't happy with his progress at the end. So since I've been power leveling, I said, I'm different, and went to the vehicle theme a day early. I started with this sketch of Lightning McQueen. I mean, wow, just beautiful art. And then said, okay, I'm gonna trace an image of him, build a wireframe so I can understand the shapes better. I even tried to draw like the other side that you can't see, which made it a little confusing, but something about that activated my brain. From there, I traced out where the wheels were and then all the edges so I could make a cube to reference. Then based on the reference, made my best recreation, no tracing. And when I got to shading, I tried to implement what I learned from Hornet. When it comes to complex 3D shapes like Lightning McQueen, you need to think about what's curved, what's flat, what's going to be naturally darker, what's going to be lighter. And I think overall I did a good job. My line work is still very messy, but I'm understanding the mechanics behind it. Now day 5 for real. With Lightning McQueen behind me, I wanted to do another vehicle that would challenge me further. So I said, you know what? I'm doing the Akira slide. The Akira slide is one of the most iconic and heavily referenced shots in animation. It's full of dynamic action and overall just really sick. So by doing this, I was forced to learn perspective. I drew out a box of the road, then a box of the bike, then a rough outline, and finally a fine outline. I did all of these in different colors and on different layers to make it easier to visualize the space and move stuff around. Then when it came to shading, I did my best to recreate the shading of the image, but also did a little bit of original shading based on my intuition and different light sources. Once I was done with the bike itself, I made this silly guy because I didn't want to bother with making a human after an hour of bike. And for whatever reason, I decided I'd add flames to the wheels, which honestly made this turn out way cooler. I looked at a picture of fire to understand the shading, then added more yellow light where the fire would be reflecting. A lot of people left comments saying when I was shading, I could use a warmer tone for the highlights and a cooler tone for the shadows. This is great advice, and it helped me make a lot of stuff that not only looks good, but is starting to become more stylistic. I was getting so much better, but I could still go further. I made another Kirby and this guy who kind of looks like Morty, I guess, to practice shading and highlights specifically. See, shadows are easy to me because you just gotta shade where the light isn't, but highlights are hard because you gotta know where the light is coming from specifically, and it breaks my brain, or it broke my brain because I figured it out the next day. For day 6, the theme was weapon. I wanted to make the Master Sword from Zelda, a gun, and Trunks with this sword, but I decided to save Trunks for day 7 because the Master Sword took me 2 hours. For the gun, I used a reference, but decided to swap the angle. I made a little perspective map and based the lines of the gun on said perspective map, which made for a nice effect. I wish I'd picked up a slightly different angle because the grip was really difficult to make and small, but overall, still better than what I used to draw for a gun. Here's that for reference. Then to the Master Sword. I made a box reference to try my best at making both sides symmetrical, despite this being digital art where I could just copy and flip it. We ball out here. We do this. We're in the trenches, baby. I used a line tool for the main body because it seemed way easier, and I was right. Made the lines come out much more smooth and pretty. One thing to note, this is digital art. With digital art, you can cheat a lot to make good stuff. I don't need to mix paint or find the right highlighter. I can just steal that color. I don't need to be the greatest artist on pen and paper. As long as I can make stuff that looks good, we're chilling. The most difficult thing about the Master Sword was the shading of the hilt. The hilt is very intricate because it's basically wings. In retrospect, I should have made little tubes to understand the perspective better, but by just following the reference, I started to build a much deeper understanding of shading 3D objects. My trouble was with highlights, but by having such direct lighting for this one, I was able to understand them much better. For the wings, I needed to highlight next to the shadows because each end of one tube is the beginning of a new one, and if the light is on the right, the highlights are going to be on the right of every tube, while the shadows are on the left, so they'll be touching. Also, I realized for spheres, if the light is in front of the object, the highlights aren't going to be on the edge because the light's fully reflected from the front, and the curves are going to become a shadow. That's something I wanted to lock in for later. Now for the final day. I decided for the anime theme to do the drink from Dragon Ball Z, and I don't know if the progress is as visible here, but it's definitely there. I picked up this cheap drawing tablet at Best Buy for 40 bucks, and it came with 2 free years of Clip Studio Paint Pro, which I know a lot of artists used. So I switched over from Krita, and this drawing is not only me learning the pen, but also me learning Clip Studio. I picked a very dynamic pose for this one because a lot of artists get stuck in the trap of drawing a single standing pose and have trouble doing anything with motion. So my strategy is drawing exclusively the hard stuff with motion because it'll inform in my brain how the shapes work in 3D space. For this one, I again started with some perspective lines specifically for the sword and the motion of the drink. If I were to do this again, I'd sketch out a stick figure version and add weight from there. But anyway, I tried out a new brush for the shading, and I already have a bunch of notes for myself. I want to use clipping masks or clipping layers for each individual section of shading, so I can select, for example, the sword specifically, so there's no overlap. Again, that's why I love digital art. There's so many ways to just cheat. But for this one, I specifically worked on upping my line sizes for shading. Wavy fabric is not something I'd call myself good at, but boy, did I cook for the coat and the pants. The boots, we don't talk about the boots. I needed a better outline because they look rough. But this is what 1 week of dedicated practice looks like. I'm a quick learner and I've been hyper fixating on this, so that's part of it. I've also been spending upwards of 3 or 4 hours a day on just drawing, but I'm getting so much better. And to prove it, I want to do one more final drawing just to compare my skills to day one. You probably notice it in the background every now and then, but I wanted to make one final drawing of Gojo to compare it to day one. So as the time lapse finishes, I want to quickly summarize how I believe you can get better quickly. First, draw references as closely as you can. Just copy what you see. It's fine because as long as you are doing it intentionally, your brain will start to put the pieces together. Second, draw a full composition. Don't just do a sketch. Don't just do the head. Commit to a full piece. It's okay if it doesn't look good. It's okay if you got John Skellington over here with the big skull and the flat body. Because when you look at what's bad, you'll know what you need to improve on. Third, draw different things. Draw everything. Don't just do people. Don't just do animals or cars or swords or whatever. Do everything because the skills you learn from all of them carry over. And last but not least, don't beat yourself up. You're learning a skill. It's gonna take time. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to you. Look at the oldest thing you drew and notice how far you've come. It's okay if your piece isn't perfect. It's okay if the eyes are wonky. It's okay if the boot looks like that. It's okay if the guy looks like that. You're learning. Just make the guy better next time. That's it. I think of Scott Cawthon a lot. Whenever he made a FNAF game, he took the criticisms that people gave of his last game and specifically focused on that in the next one. People said FNAF 2 had too many animatronics. FNAF 3 had 1. People said FNAF 3 wasn't scary. FNAF 4, terrifying. Take what you don't like of your art, use it as motivation for something to improve on. That's enough of me yapping. Here's the final Gojo. I'll just throw day one's best attempt next to it to show how far I came in just a week. And remember, this is just a week. I'm still doing a month. So if you want to watch my progress or join along yourself, you can catch each new short as they come out on YouTube.